This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the current state of WWE. I've got Anthony DeMarco here. It is Monday, and that means we're going to talk about generally what's going on in WWE. Now, normally we focus on a single topic and dive deep, which most of the time focuses around Roman Reigns and the Sami Zayn storyline. But tonight I want to talk, and we discussed off the air about a few topics in WWE. We're going to talk about The Rock and the Rumble. We're going to talk about the lack of a pay-per-view in December, and just the overall direction of Monday Night Raw. So I'm ready to get going. Are you ready to go, Anthony?
Yeah, Ben, and I think it's about time that Raw gets going as well, as we kind of lead into that topic.
Yeah. So go ahead. What do you feel? How do you feel about the general direction of Monday Night Raw?
I gotta say, I want to like it. I love the repackaged version of Theory, the more serious version, no longer the future, that he's the here and now. You know, I think that if Seth Rollins had to use the United States Championship, he was the best guy to do so. And I like a lot of the main, I guess, focal points on Monday Night Raw. You have Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, Theory. Obviously, I think the Judgment Day has been excellent, as well as kind of like a revitalization of AJ Styles with the OC. I think Bianca Belair is obviously the best woman in the company right now, Becky Lynch's return. But I still feel that Raw is hurt by that extra hour. And I know that it's kind of screaming at the crowds at this point, that it's never going to change. But I think if Raw needs to have that extra hour, which we know it will always have, it needs to have a better product. And I think Raw has the talent right now, but as we've talked about ad nauseum for the last 6, 7, 8 months, the fact that they don't have a world championship is really hurting the brand. And in a lot of ways, they don't have a tag team championship either, because the Usos are almost exclusively on SmackDown. Obviously, that's going to change tonight as we have them defending the Undisputed Tag Team titles against Riddle and Elias in a match that I think nobody's expecting them to drop the championship in. But all in all, I like the talent Raw has. I like the main storylines. I still feel like it's a tough to get through show because of how long it is.
There's no way around it. There's no way around it. And I don't see, as you said, even under the guidance of Triple H, under his management, under his watch, as much as he wants to get rid of it, and he's been on the record in the past of saying that this third hour is infinitely harder to do, and I sympathize with that. I really do. 3 hours is a bear. And looking at how Triple H has filled those hours, I think what he's done to compensate what Vince didn't do was just add a ton more wrestling. Like, he's adding longer matches, and that's fine with me. I would do the same thing. To me, adding more matches, or maybe even just longer matches, is easier to do than coming up with the entertainment-y stuff, the backstage skits, the 15 to 20-minute promos. The wrestling's much easier to manage because all you have to do is tell two guys, two women, however many men or women in whatever match, hey, here's the outcome, get us there, and put on a great match. Then you leave it up to the wrestlers, and you don't have to be sitting stressing about, what's somebody going to say, how's this segment going to look, how's the lighting going to be. To me, Triple H is taking the better road of just putting more wrestling in the wrestling show. And I like that overall, but no matter what you fill it with, 3 hours is still, it's insane. It's twice as long as most movies. I think the average movie is about 90 minutes. So you're doubling a movie, just a normal movie time. And so I get it, but I would agree that the WWE or Triple H has really had to navigate some rough waters with the lack of a top belt on Raw. They're trying to do the best they can with the U.S. belt and trying to frame that as the top championship on Raw. And they are, I guess that's true to some degree, only because Roman Reigns, even though he can float between two brands, is still on SmackDown, and that's only every 3 weeks. So they're doing what they can with the creative they put themselves into. I mean, while I feel sympathetic, they've also put themselves in this situation. Like, they did this to them. They didn't just have someone else do it to them. So they are reaping what they've sown of taking the belt and just putting all their eggs in one basket with Roman. And I'm not trying to make this a Roman conversation that it always seems to trend into, but it is a side effect that they're going to have to live with.
And I don't think it's going to be a long-term plan for that very reason. Like, I'm almost convinced now that eventually the championships will go back to being split. WWE will go back to Raw. Universal will stay on SmackDown. But I guess the one positive I've taken from this is how important the Raw Women's Championship has felt. And maybe not even so much the championship, but I feel like Bianca Belair, you can make the case right now, is the face of Monday Night Raw. And title feels infinitely more important than the SmackDown Women's Championship. Do you think that maybe a positive kind of result of them not having a world championship on the men's side has been how important Bianca Belair's title run has felt?
Oh, I think the women are loving this. And you know what? More power to them. I'm glad that the women's championship feels as important as it ever has. Now, I can't say the same thing for the Raw, or rather the women's tag titles that have gone back, unfortunately, into obscurity that we see just hanging out on the waist of Io Sky and Dakota Kai, while there is, again, no division with a championship. And they just checked a box and said, yeah, see, the women are, equal. They have the same championships that men do. And look, we created a tag team division. No, you didn't. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all just it's a smoke show. Like, it's not real. You have a championship for no division. And it's really, I was hoping that Triple H would have taken those championships and done more with them, or prepared the division better before reintroducing them. Now, Sasha and Naomi could come back, if or when that happens, but still, it's a weak division on top of the men's being a tag team division that's weak. And so I don't know. I just think that right now, Raw is in a position that's great for the Raw Women's Championship. Bianca Belair is one of the faces. Seth Rollins is another face of Monday Night Raw. But certainly, Bianca Belair is on I think, a better run than her first go-around with the Raw Women's Championship when she won it at the previous WrestleMania.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And not a lot of people are talking about this, but, she's going on, 10 months as the champion? And I think it makes sense. Like, honestly, this is a long title run for Bianca Belair that, in my mind, makes absolute sense, because she is, not to, play off of her slogan of the EST, but she is kind of just better at everything right now than every other woman competitor. And obviously, I think she's on a collision course with probably Rhea Ripley for WrestleMania. And I think Rhea Ripley is someone who's been on just an amazing ascent since joining the Judgment Day. And I think you said it, but you're absolutely right that Rhea Ripley is the best part of the Judgment Day. If she wasn't part of that group, I don't know if it would be half as interesting. And I know they say Finn Balor's the leader, but it almost feels like she's the quasi-leader in a lot of ways. So you have two really good up-and-coming women on the Raw roster. And look, it doesn't make up for all the negative about Raw. I do think it's absolutely absurd that Raw has felt like 100% the B pay-per-view since I would say probably the better part of the year, or ever since Roman really got going on his run. It slowly kind of faded into the background behind SmackDown. And the other part about this is, and not to kind of swing back to the championships, but we always say, why are you in professional wrestling? Why are you in any competitive sport or simulated sport? To win championships. And on Monday Night Raw, a roster that is bigger than SmackDown, a show that has more time to fill, to only have one championship always available to the men, it just doesn't really feel like it makes a lot of sense in that way. And again, I know the tag titles float between both shows, but more times than not, they are kind of more on the SmackDown side. So I just really think they have to find a way to get that world title back on Monday Night Raw to make it feel more realistic that the guys are vying for something on that brand.
It feels like we've been saying this for a year. I mean, it's really since WrestleMania. I mean, we've been harping on this, and our opinions have not changed on it. In fact, I feel stronger now than ever about it. And yes, Sami Zayn has been a nice distraction, and WWE stumbled into that. I don't think they designed it to be this successful or Sami to go this far, but I'm sure they're loving it because that way it takes their attention away, the fans' attention away from just how insane the run is with Roman, and how really just unfortunate it is for the wrestlers, the men, especially on Raw, that are not able to compete for a championship outside of the U.S. Now, back to your point, the last point about Bianca Belair and the collision course of Rhea Ripley. I can't wait for that match. It was a match that was supposed to happen a number of months ago. Rhea Ripley had dental problems and other problems medically. now that they are both ready to compete and they're good to go, yeah, WrestleMania seems great. I could also see Charlotte Flair, as she always does, being interjected into this in a triple threat. I mean, Charlotte Flair is the quintessential kind of fly in the ointment. She's always there to spoil a one-on-one to make it a triple threat. And I hope that's not the case, because I think Rhea Bianca one-on-one is a better matchup. But once Charlotte Flair returns, I think she will be quickly drafted to Raw. Or just traded to Raw. Becky's coming to SmackDown, as I've and you have been saying for a number of months now, to set up Ronda and Becky and Bianca and Charlotte. But Rhea Ripley, I think, should be, in my mind, a WrestleMania main event with Bianca. I just have a feeling, and I don't know if you feel the same, that Charlotte is somehow going to be pushed into that with Bianca and Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania.
There's one wild card for me in what they do with Charlotte at WrestleMania. And that's if they actually bring Money in the Bank back to WrestleMania. Because if they actually go ahead and abolish the Money in the Bank pay-per-view and move the match back to WrestleMania like it was in its infancy and how it started, I think Charlotte Flair is in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and to be honest, probably wins the Money in the Bank ladder match. And I think that would be a good spot for her, because I don't think that she belongs in Belair versus Ripley, because that is a story of two up-and-coming women and the future of that division in a lot of ways, and a match that is long time coming since the summertime. And then on the SmackDown side, I hope to God they don't think about doubling down and doing another triple threat with Ronda and Becky, but I can't see them doing that. So then it would leave me to, does she have a grudge match with a Bayley? Does she have a grudge match with Sasha if Sasha were to return? But I think that if they bring back the Money in the Bank ladder match for WrestleMania, I would assume that she would be in that match and would probably be a favorite to win. And I would actually be on board with her winning, because as a heel, she would probably be the perfect woman to hold that briefcase. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, the case to bring Money in the Bank back to WrestleMania it's strong. I mean, because then there's always that possibility of, wait a minute, the person that just won it, could they cash in tonight? You know, because by the time you get to WrestleMania, I think it's usually in
July
May
or whatever.
sometime in July. Yeah, they've shuffled it around. By the time you get to WrestleMania in April, that person is cashed in and either won or lost that match. So you more often than not don't have somebody with a Money in the Bank briefcase hovering over WrestleMania. So I think that is a much stronger case. Now, the Money in the Bank event I don't think is as egregious as Hell in a Cell or Elimination Chamber, actually Chamber I do like as its own pay-per-view, but I do think that the Money in the Bank match itself should go back to WrestleMania. It makes it so much more exciting, because then you're like, whoa, they could cash in tonight. It adds a whole new layer of unpredictability. So I think that I agree. I mean, having Charlotte win the Money in the Bank makes sense to me. But switching gears, because I know we don't have a ton of time, I want to also, as we alluded to at the beginning of the show, I want to talk about the no pay-per-view. There's no pay-per-view in December. There's no day one event on January 1st. So how do you feel about that? This is just a crazy chunk of time. 8+ weeks we've had. Now we're about 7 weeks out from the Rumble. Do you like the fact that they don't have a pay-per-view between Survivor Series and the Rumble? Or do you feel like they probably should have stuck something in, whether it was Armageddon or, I don't know, was it the day one event? How do you feel about this crazy amount of time between pay-per-views?
Do you remember December to Dismember?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do.
Or New Year's Revolution. But look, I don't hate it, right? Because I do think it got to a point with Vince that there were just so many pay-per-views that it felt diluted a bit. And obviously we've seen Triple H kind of go away with the B-level pay-per-views. Like, if you think back to it, there's only been one B-level pay-per-view that we've seen under Triple H, and that was Extreme Rules. Because obviously Clash at the Castle was a massive event, and Crown Jewel was a massive event, and then around that you had Survivor Series and SummerSlam. So Triple H really hasn't been overseen a lot of the B-level pay-per-views, and no matter what we would have seen, whether that be Armageddon or TLC or Day One, and to be honest, I actually really liked the Day One pay-per-view. I thought it was a really cool concept on New Year's Day. Those would have been B-level pay-per-views. So look, I'm okay with it. I don't hate it, but I still would have preferred it just because it feels as you alluded to, that there's a lot of time to fill with like no big match level payoff. And another thing about it is that means that we're not going to see Roman Reigns for a large run here. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him until 2023 at this point. It means that we're for sure not going to see a guy like Brock Lesnar. And I know people still don't want to hear it, but those are the two biggest stars WWE has under contract at this very moment, Brock and Roman Reigns. So I just feel that it kind of puts things in a holding pattern, which isn't the worst idea. Like, I like long-term storytelling. I like that, like, not immediate payoff and immediate gratification. Easy enough for me to say. But I still do feel that it does kind of drag a bit when you have this big of a gap. And that's not to say that Roman had to defend his championships or you had to have, like, a massive main event. But still, like, even to, you know, put the U.S. title in a big prominent spot on a pay-per-view, or the Intercontinental Championship. I just feel like they could have maybe done with having a day one again, just to, you know, give the fans something. And again, I did like the concept. So while I don't hate it, I guess I would have ultimately preferred them to have one pay-per-view in between, just because it is an egregious amount of time.
Yeah, I think when we look at this, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, probably the longest I can remember between events ever. And again, I don't know how I'm going to feel about it until I get to the Rumble. Right now, it feels like an infinite amount of time away, but at the same time, it's, you know, the holiday season. We've got New Year's, we've got Christmas coming up. Before we're going to blink and we're going to be like, oh my God, Rumble's 2 weeks, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away. Like, time goes quick. But from a pro wrestling standpoint, I think, yeah, they probably could have kind of stuck in a day one. It's a nice time to put a pay-per-view on because everyone has the day off. No matter what day it is, they have that day off for New Year's Day. And, you know, if you're hungover, it's a great time to look forward to. Hell, man, I feel like crap this morning from New Year's Eve, but man, I got a pay-per-view tonight. That's cool. And it doesn't have to be the most earth-shattering event. It is a B-level pay-per-view, but it's a nice filler. And right now, that's how I feel too, that like they probably could have to at least build to programs that would then feed into the Rumble. But now they have 7 weeks left to just focus on the Rumble. And we've already barely heard about the Rumble. Like, barely, other than Kofi Kingston's ridiculous proclamation, which happens every year, where people just declare that they're in it and they're in it. There has been no mention of the Rumble, barely. And that tells you that, yeah, we've got a long way to go. We haven't really settled on who's going to be doing what, so it's going to be a lot of treading water with their matches and their progression of things over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I really believe, and I've said this, I said this in my weekend review last night, that until 2023, like once that calendar flips to the new year, what happens in December is usually nothing earth-shattering. Star power is low. The WWE knows that the focus is on the holidays. It's a tough time for TV in general. Football, especially here in the United States, is in full gear. Playoffs are about to start. Everyone's, it's a difficult time to get people to focus on the product. So I don't believe you're not going to see any massive returns in December. I really believe that. I don't think we'll see Charlotte. I don't think we'll see The Rock. I don't think we'll see any of those returns, Sasha included, until the calendar turns to 2023. And so my thinking, to put a cap on this for the pay-per-view piece of our conversation, I really don't think that it's going to be it's not a terrible thing. It's just, as fans of WWE, for how many years you and I have been fans, and everyone listening, it feels like forever. And we're like looking, we're like, oh my, how are they going to do this? It's going to be a lot of treading water. It's going to be kind of the next 3-4 weeks of just getting through, and then it's like, look out. And we're going to go from first gear to fifth gear real quick when that calendar turns to 2023. So any final thoughts on this before we move to our Rock conversation?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say is just maybe Armageddon holds a special place in my heart, because it was historically a pay-per-view that kind of had big things happen to it, like the December pay-per-view. Look, obviously in 2001, they didn't have Armageddon because of 9/11, or because of 9/11 rather. So they made it Vengeance, I believe. But that was a massive pay-per-view in December of 2001. Then in December of 2003, you had Armageddon come back, and you had the Evolution Night of Shine, where all members of Evolution walked out with a championship. So I guess it's just because historically it has been a month for a pay-per-view where big things were happening. And I have always been a proponent of actually having big title changes sometimes happen on B-level pay-per-views to give people an incentive to watch. So I guess that's why I'm maybe partial to having a pay-per-view in December. But again, like you said, it's probably just a being used to it thing. So I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to see how it is, but I want to see how dull the product gets between now and Rumble, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, I could be totally wrong. I mean, I hope I am, that things continue to progress nicely and maybe we get a big return. I could be totally wrong. I'm just going off of Vince McMahon's running and management of the company for 40 years. And what I've been watching for 25 is this is typically, especially the last 10 to 15 years, been kind of like meh. Like, all right, December is kind of your, just calm before the storm. So maybe I'll be wrong, but I think that that's the way they're going to do it, especially if they don't have it at pay-per-view. All right, let's get to The Rock. Speaking of the Rumble, and the latest report, this is coming from Dave Meltzer, coming from Wrestling Observer Radio. Take that for what it's worth. Love him, hate him. He does have sources inside WWE, and he does have a decent track record of being right on things. So, regardless of your personal feelings on Dave Meltzer, the fact is that he is a credible source in what's going on in WWE internally. And the latest is that there is discussion of having The Rock enter the Rumble for the men's Royal Rumble, obviously, and winning it. So I'll reserve my thoughts. What are yours? If this is true, what are your thoughts?
I think it was last week you and I were talking about are they going to the Rumble if they want to get to Rock versus Roman, and I guess this would kind of check that box, right? Like, I feel like everyone is expecting Cody Rhodes to win it. I mean, aside from Cody Rhodes, I don't really see anyone else who would be in line at this moment to win it. Maybe Kevin Owens, but that's more of a stretch at this point. Maybe Sami Zayn if they really want to swerve us. But I mean, if they have The Rock come back and win it, it really kind of checks that box and they don't have to Rock and Roman. Unfortunately, that would mean that it would be for the championship, but I think at that point, or at this point, that's a foregone conclusion. But I think the other part about this is would he be challenging Roman for only one of those titles? Because obviously we've heard rumors and reports that they're considering having Roman defend both championships separately on night 1 and night 2 of SmackDown or of WrestleMania. Although, I mean, SmackDown usually has a WrestleMania SmackDown before the actual WrestleMania anyway.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Or WrestleMania Backlash and WrestleMania Judgment Day, but not to dive down.
Serious, I forgot. Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I guess it would just make it would be the easy choice, right? It would be low-hanging fruit. I wouldn't be a proponent of it just because I think historically, going with the returning part-timer to win the Rumble hasn't really worked, i.e. Dave Bautista in 2014. And I think that a lot of times over the last decade or so, WWE has botched the winner of the Royal Rumble, and fans have always been more ready to see a guy like Nakamura win it, or Seth Rollins win it, or Drew McIntyre win it. I don't think everyone was really thrilled that Brock won it last year, which I feel like a lot of people forget. But, I mean, look, I wouldn't hate it because I'm a big Rock fan, and I think most people are huge Rock fans. But I just think that there's another way to get to Rock and Roman than him winning the Royal Rumble.
That's kind of what I was going to say is I wouldn't do it this way either. Now, let's pretend this match is happening because, again, it still could not. I mean, The Rock is doing 800 things a minute, so who knows? His schedule, his movie, all that. He's doing a ton of stuff. So assuming this match is happening, I agree that Rumble is not the best way to get to that match. It should be Roman coming out. It should be in a promo with the Bloodline after they've turned on Sami Zayn, which we all know is happening probably in the next 1 to 2 months before WrestleMania. And as Kevin Owens feuds with Roman, and that'll probably be the Royal Rumble championship match is Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns, and Sami Zayn's going to be there, and maybe, something happens wonky with Sami and the breakdown starts. I really wouldn't do Rock putting him in the Rumble because there's a better way. It's not the best story to tell. The story shouldn't be Rock just inserting himself in the Rumble. It should be just him coming out after a scathing promo from Roman saying that, talking more about his family and how he's always been the head of the table. He was meant for this, and really doubling down, maybe actually getting people to boo him for once. That'd be nice. And having The Rock come out then. It's really, this entrance for The Rock is built for after Roman wins, or retains rather, the championship for the umpteenth time. holding the championships above his head with the fireworks going off that we've seen how many effing times over the last 2.5 years, pretty much every pay-per-view. And then having the Rock's music hit. Like, I know we've seen the formula with John Cena have it happen. We've seen it with others, but that's what this is made for. That moment is made for that particular situation, not necessarily the Rumble. I wouldn't hate it. People would be all over this and go crazy still, but it's just a better story if The Rock interrupts Roman after he's already conquered Kevin Owens again, and then he comes out at the Rumble, not as an entrant or participant, but rather just focusing 100% on Roman and going face-to-face there, maybe giving him a rock bottom and then just staring at him and then staring at the WrestleMania sign, because that'll be up as people point to the WrestleMania sign for the next 3 months after that until WrestleMania itself. To me, I would agree. I mean, that's how I would do it. Would you do the same thing or something similar if you could set it up if this match happens?
Because I think that if The Rock comes back and wins the Royal Rumble, you're kind of risking him getting booed. Because I just don't think fans take kindly to having a part-timer, or not even a part-timer, just a blast from the past show up and win the Rumble and take a spot away. Like, that's what single-handedly torpedoed Batista's return in 2014. Like, would you not agree? Remember when Batista was supposed to return? I was stoked. Like, what was your entire view on how that travesty played out?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a beautiful thing to watch. And I understand why people did it. I was excited for Batista too, but I totally get why they did. And then, of course, the Daniel Bryan factor was there in 2015, even more so in Philadelphia. But yeah, like, people didn't want to see it. They're regretful of it and resentful because the people see through it. It's not that they don't respect that individual, or that they're not a legend or a Hall of Famer in the business, or that people don't want to see them wrestle. It's the fact that championships should be reserved for full-time talent. Championships should not be reserved for, you're in for 2 months and then you're back to doing whatever you're doing and we'll see you in a couple of years. That's not what championship matches should be reserved for, or who they should be reserved for so many reasons. Like, number one, it doesn't allow talent to get, especially younger talent, to grow. You're taking a spot away from a guy that needs it versus a Hall of Famer that is not going to gain anything from being in a championship match at WrestleMania. That's number one. And number two, it's not great for morale on the roster. Like, if I'm a younger talent, I'm kicking ass for the last few years. I feel like my time's coming, and then I hear about a legend coming back and taking that spot. It's like, that's not great for morale, and it goes against what you're supposed to be doing in building new stars. So and also the third point, you already know the outcome. 99% chance that legend is going to lose against the established champion. So, like, The Rock coming in, he's going to lose, most likely. There's a case to be made he could hang around as a champion for a few months and then go away. But he's not going to be there very long, regardless of the outcome. So it's very short-term thinking for those three reasons.
Yeah, and I think, to swing back to The Rock here, I think there's just an easier path to go down than him winning the Rumble. But maybe if they only want Roman to compete in one match and defend both championships, I guess that's the only way to get there. But if he is really going to separate the titles at WrestleMania, because I've heard that as well, that they may separate the championships at Mania, even if he holds on to the Universal. And if that's the case, if you want Cody Rhodes to win it or whatever, he could win the WWE title and take it over to Monday Night Raw. And then you have Rock versus Roman for the Universal Championship on night 2 or whatever. So, I mean, I think there's a way here for them to not have The Rock win the Rumble, but I think for them it would just save a lot of headaches if they want Roman to defend, it as one championship, which, I mean, I'm kind of losing track on what direction they're going to go with that. I do think eventually they're going to re-separate the titles because they haven't made one unification title yet, and I do think ultimately it is the best thing to go back to two separate champions, so Monday Night Raw could have a legitimate world title each and every week. But at the same time, it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes with The Rock coming back, because like you said, I think it would almost water down the reason for his return.
Oh God, yeah, no doubt. This should be about, as you and I have said for years now, it's been years, this is about family. This is personal. This has nothing to do with the championship. It takes away from the match. It's a distraction. It's unnecessary. And I hate saying that about the top belts in the company. But in this case, it is beyond the championships. It's not above them. It's just a different direction. It's not needed. And I know that the temptation is there, and I really think that Triple H is going to give in to that temptation, that it should be for a championship. It should be for the belt. And it's just, I understand it that they feel it makes it look bigger on paper. I understand why they think that. In 99% of cases, a championship does make a match bigger and feel more important. In this case, it doesn't, because it is all about family. It's all about who's the true head of the table. Now, Rock can come in and saying, you've been talking this trash for the last 2.5 years. I've respected what you've done, but daddy's home, right? Like you could have The Rock have some really funny things to say to Roman Reigns, and I think it would actually reestablish Roman as a heel. But there is also, like you said, if they put him in the Rumble and they make him like entrant number 26 or 27, I don't think they'd go with 30, because then if he wins the Rumble at 30, his credibility is even less. But if they go face to face, there's that chance that actually people cheer Roman and they boo The Rock, because they know that Roman's going to be here past WrestleMania. They know that he's done an awesome job. They've accidentally turned him babyface. They're trying to resist that, but Sami Zayn just is pouring on the babyface, gravitational pull. There's nothing they can do to stop this. So The Rock coming back when people know he's not there for long in a championship match, there is that risk that outside of the first night of the excitement of him being back, that eventually when they get to WrestleMania, there is a chance. Could you see that happening in the match itself at WrestleMania if it's for the championship? Do you think there's a possibility that if they don't do this right, that The Rock could actually get booed and Roman gets cheered because they know The Rock's going away the next night?
I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, there's a chance. I think The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin are kind of immune from that, to be honest. Like, I think like they're just in such a different stratosphere that they kind of like are differentiated from the likes of Goldberg or Batista or whatever. But there's definitely a chance here. And I think that if you really want to risk it and you really want to test your fate, him winning the Royal Rumble would be a massive way to go down that road. And that's why, like, obviously, I think we've talked about this before, but I still, to this point, think that the best option for The Rock to come back would actually be joining the Bloodline and turning heel. But obviously, that would take way more out of his schedule, because there's just way more of a story to tell, as opposed to him just coming back and challenging Roman for the head of the table. So obviously, we know that's not going to happen. But I agree that, yes, if you really want to risk it and see how far you could go with The Rock without him getting booed, him winning the Rumble would certainly be a way to go about that, especially if he doesn't show up on programming before the Rumble. Like, if he just shows up as like number 30 and wins, I don't know how kindly people would take to that.
I think, again, initially, great reaction. People are excited. They're in person. They know it's historic. The Rock hasn't been back in a while. But I think after that excitement and kind of honeymoon phase wears off, and it'll wear off quickly, that people will go, wait a minute. Well, this is cool, but Roman's been here a while. He's done an awesome job. The Rock is going to be gone Monday night. Maybe he'll be the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, and then he's gone. So, like, I think the fans will eventually come around to that after their initial, oh my God, there's kind of euphoria of The Rock being back and this match happening. I don't think it's likely that this happens. By the way, so my official prediction is that as of right now, and again, 7 weeks away, I still don't think that they'll go this road. I think it's possible. I give it like a 1 out of 4 chance if they're going to do this match, that's how they do it, is The Rock entering the Rumble. Let's say 25% chance. But, to say that The Rock is immune, I think mostly he is. But we've seen in 2015 when he tried to endorse Roman Reigns that even The Rock got booed. Now, I don't think they were directly booing The Rock, but the fact that The Rock was trying to get Roman cheered and it still failed miserably in Philadelphia tells you that even The Rock is not immune to boos if the fans really don't want something. Like, even The Rock can't save everything, and he's not totally immune. Again, different situation, different time, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now. But still, you're right, though. If they want to test that theory, do you want to test how much the people love The Rock and are going to just ignore the fact that he's not going to be here for more than just a couple of months? Yeah, you go ahead, have him win the Rumble at number 30 and see how many times he appears on SmackDown to have a promo with Roman Reigns. And, maybe the via satellite crap comes back and all that stuff. We'll see how long that honeymoon phase lasts with the fans. I think there's a chance that it doesn't go off the way that they want it, even with The Rock, being headlining the WrestleMania event. So we'll see.
I mean, either way, I think that we know that at this point it is certainly finally trending towards The Rock coming back and face off Roman Reigns, which, I mean, at least we're going to get that because I feel like within the next year, this bloodline angle is probably going to come to an end.
It has to. It has to come to an end. Like, as great as this storyline is, WWE has a habit of, pushing things too far, too long, and then the fans flip on it and they're ready to move on where WWE isn't, and they just continue to try to milk it, and there's just nothing left. And I think that they could reach that. Once Sami Zayn is removed from the group and he turns on the group, but the group turns on him in the next 1 to 2 months, then I think things are, all bets are off, especially if Kevin Owens and Sami reunite to take the Usos down at WrestleMania for the tag belts, and then Roman is, dethroned, maybe at WrestleMania, certainly, yeah. Within a year from now, I think we're going to look back right now and say that, it all started at the Rumble. Where did everything start to go wrong for the Bloodline? I think we're going to say the Royal Rumble of 2023, and that it eventually totally collapses at WrestleMania or shortly thereafter. But again, that 1,000 days is May 29th, right after Memorial Day here in the U.S. That is, May 29th is the 1,000th day. So do they push it another 6 weeks? I can't see them not doing that. I can't. So.
It's just going to give us a lot to talk about for sure. Like once we get into WrestleMania season, I feel like even us now, we're going to be somewhat in a holding pattern the next month or so until we really start getting into Royal Rumble and the turn of the calendar into 2023, because I would be surprised if we don't see Roman Reigns until 2023 at this point.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I'd say one appearance. I'm going to do the over under of one. I'm going to say he shows up once in December. And then, probably not until after the new year, I would agree. So, all right, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I know that you and I are, I'm working today. I know you're probably working later today. I appreciate you coming on and being able to talk about this as we have 7 more weeks to dissect this whole storyline. And I don't think week by week we're going to get a whole lot of progression. So we'll have to get creative in how we discuss these things. But let everyone know what the latest show is that you did on the WWE Retro. I really enjoyed it. I'll let you tell them what that is.
Yeah, so I covered the Invasion pay-per-view from 2001 that featured Team WCW, ECW against Team WWF. A pay-per-view that I think was overall good for what WWF and Vince McMahon had to work with, talent-wise, but one that I think that in a perfect world they would have liked for it to have gone differently. They obviously doubled down with the Stone Cold Steve Austin heel turn. And, I mean, look, I understand that they had to work with what they were given. I kind of mentioned it in my show, like, how realistic would it have been if you had, like, Austin and Rock leading Team WWF and, like, DDP and Booker T leading Team WCW. So, like, I kind of mentioned in my show that in a perfect world, you probably would have had Austin, Rock, Triple H, Taker, and like Kurt Angle on Team WWF, and on WCW you probably would have had the 3 NWO guys, Goldberg and Sting, maybe Ric Flair in there as well. But unfortunately, they didn't get all those talent, and they just had to work with what they had. And I think given the predicament they were in, they did the best they could. What did you think listening back to it?
Brought back a lot of memories, no doubt about it, from 21 years ago. My God, brought back so many memories of that whole event, and really just appreciating the fact that they did the best they could with it, despite, as you said, the lack of star power that they had because of the guaranteed contracts from Ted Turner and WCW. The fact that they didn't have those top guys, I would totally agree. I think that match that you just laid out is as big of a dream match as you can possibly imagine, almost in any generation, because it has every top star from WWF and every top star from WCW in one match. I mean, my God, it's such a shame that the timing didn't work out, that those contracts, that Vince couldn't buy them out, or that, whatever the case may have been, that they had to wait another year before Goldberg, his return or debut in WWE against The Rock happened. And it was ill time for the top stars. But given that, I think they still did an okay, decent job. I mean, listening back to your audio did bring back a lot of exciting feelings, and it's also because of the fact that it wasn't managed the best, but like a lot of the a lot of the errors in booking was made up for the just immense amount of star power that they still did have at their disposal. And of course, the Stone Cold turning on WWF again and trying to double down on the heel turn, which didn't work. And eventually the what thing came out of it when he turned back face in 2002. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd really recommend that anybody who hasn't listened to that show on Retro that we just released on Friday, go check that out and really check out the Vengeance pay-per-view as a whole, or the Invasion pay-per-view as a whole in 2001. I think you'll really enjoy it. Even if you didn't live during that era, it's really almost, it was a dream scenario. It really was.
And you had the 2 entranceways for the Alliance and for WWF. So it was pretty cool. I mean, like I said, and you alluded to, obviously they were missing a lot of WCW talent, but they had to work with what they had, and I think that's the reason why they brought in the ECW talent into the equation, because they had so many former ECW guys already at their disposal with the Dudley Boys and Rhino.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they tried their best, knowing that they lacked in talent, to try to put more volume. Even though the star power wasn't greater, they felt that maybe adding more would kind of deodorize the fact that they didn't have that top talent. But again, I still don't think that it was a terrible storyline. It was mismanaged and got watered down a lot of times with like WCW referees having to do WCW matches and all that kind of weird stuff, and WCW announcers, Paul Heyman and Joey Styles eventually came in, that kind of stuff. They overthought it, I think, at times. But I mean, I really look back and I still have fond memories of it, even if it wasn't the complete best scenario they could have put out there. So, all right, well, cool. Guys, go check that out. And Anthony, we will be talking again in a week, as we will then be 6 weeks away from the Royal Rumble.
Slowly inching towards there, man. I'll talk to you next week.
I know. All right. Talk to you next week. All right.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.